Hello, my name is Kyle Devereaux, and I will be talking about self-determinism in science and society, more specifically, how society is related to science via self-determinism. In physics, the second law of thermodynamics states that a quantity called entropy, which is a measure of disorder, is forever increasing in the universe. This idea has given rise to the principles of causation and indeterminism in many recent physical laws. However, of course, the second law of thermodynamics was only discovered fairly recently. Previously, physical law was assumed by scientists such as Newton to be true even if time was reversed. Thus, time was viewed as reversible. This was then contradicted by the advent of probabilistic fields in physics, such as chaos theory, which deals with the disorder as described by entropy, thermodynamics, which had to be changed to accommodate probabilistic theory, and quantum theory, giving rise to the new laws of nature opposed to Newton's old laws. However, during this time, religion, namely Judeo-Christian beliefs and other popular Western thought, had taken a stance that time is irreversible and free will is not an illusion, as contradicted by the old laws of nature. Currently, there are many conflicting views on the issue of determinism in both scientific and religious circles, and its implications for the existence or illusion of free will. Some view that scientific discoveries are inapplicable to the psychological phenomena, such as free will. Others view that the second law of thermodynamics and the probabilistic nature of new physical laws can be used to justify the illusion of free will and the principles of existentialism and other modern philosophical schools of thought. It is this author's opinion that free will, causation, and similar beliefs are related to physical definition of entropy to an extent. More specifically, the definition of determinism by entropy can support the psychology of free will. This is evident when it is realized that free will is both a scientific and religious matter via physical relationships, as seen in the shift between deterministic and probabilistic laws in quantum theory and the current absence of predictability in theory. Some may still point out that the change in physical laws do not change their existential or religious characteristics. However, this is beside the point. Existential characteristics of scientific law are unimportant in the discussion of free will. The changes which have occurred in the shift from Newtonian classical mechanics to modern physics has brought the inclusion of probabilistic approximations for laws, which were originally thought to be solid definitions. However, the inclusion of probabilistic approximations, such as those in chaos theory, has changed physical laws to describe irreversible processes, and therefore justify society free will. Jose Pontes, in his historical paper Determinism, Chaos, Self-Organization, and Entropy, describes the relationship between the old Newtonian mechanics and Western civilization. The conflict resulted from the statement that all natural phenomena evolve deterministically, as from the old laws of nature, is a postulate that collides with the principle that man is free and that the future can be shaped. Pontes continues to illustrate how the present state of physics has changed by saying, but man has recovered the freedom and responsibilities lost with the development of Newtonian mechanics in the form of the new laws of nature. This change from the old laws of nature to the new laws of nature is best illustrated in the change from the Rydberg equation to the Schrödinger equation. In this first equation, called the Rydberg equation, it's very simple, and it describes an atom in which electrons are in only a few specific spots. However, the new equation, the Schrödinger equation, is quite large, it's fairly complicated, and gives a whole probability cloud for the various possibilities of where an electron could be located at one time. This drastic change, which Pontes has shown in science from entirely deterministic to entirely probabilistic, was directly caused by the advent of quantum theory and chaos theory. Pontes' historical point of view is significant since it reflects the initial discourse between deterministic, reversible Newtonian mechanics and Western society. Western society was and still, of course, is shaped by the Judeo-Christian beliefs of freedom and self-determination. This is blatantly obvious in such political documents as the American Declaration of Independence and the Magna Carta. However, the recent creation of the new laws of nature, scientific understanding is reconciled with Western culture, and that they both support the principles of self-determination and the malleability of the future. Physically, this is a paradigm shift in the meaning behind physical laws. Newton's laws do not define the universe, they just provide approximations, models, for a dynamic setting. This parallels the dynamic, self-governed principles of Western society that all is physically achievable. Therefore, this reconciliation between physical self-determinism in science and in society via the shifts in physical law suggests a direct relationship between self-determination in Western culture, quantum theory, and chaos theory. The connection between Western society and science via free will is also evident in the unpredictability of the new laws of nature. Ilya Prokogin, in his book dealing with disorder and the current laws of physics, The End of Certainty, Time, Chaos, and the New Laws of Nature, gives insight to the present state of predictability in science when he says, when associated with instability, whether on the microscopic or macroscopic level, the new laws of nature deal with the possibility of events but do not reduce these events to deductible, predictable consequences. The unpredictability of events described by Prokogin also include Brownian motion, which is pictured here. It is the random motion of particles, and of course, as described earlier, the shift from the Bohr atom model, which describes specific places where electrons can exist, to the Schrödinger atom model, which describes a whole probability cloud in which these atoms can exist. In pointing this out, Prokogin illustrates the connection between the prevalence of probabilistic laws and the unpredictability of nature. Since there are less phenomena governed by straightforward equations and more by dumbbell probability curves, the observer is going to be more uncertain of outcomes and impeded from crafting straightforward Newtonian-like equations. This is significant since it supports the religious principle that the future is indeed unknown and that the individual can indeed shape their immediate future. Thus, the aspect of free will and self-determinism are supported by the probabilistic nature of the new laws of nature. However, many use the new laws of nature to go a step further, using them to justify such philosophies as existentialism, and then refuting free will with these conclusions. In the New York Times opinion article, "The Universe Doesn't Care About Your Purpose," Joseph P. Carter comments on the insignificance of the human race by saying, "But the universe as we understand it, it tells us nothing about the goal or meaning of existence, let alone our own. In the grand scheme of things, you and I are enormously insignificant." This realization is supported by similar assertions such as those made by Carl Sagan about the insignificance of the human race as viewed from the Voyager spacecraft as seen in this photo. Carter implies that the very existence of entropic laws is justification for the absence of purpose, and therefore the absence of free will, taking an existential point of view. And indeed, the new laws of nature with the old laws both suggest that humans are fairly insignificant. However, free will is unrelated to existentialism in the context of physical law. While the structure of physical law can give insight into the viability of free will, it can give no insight into something as superficial as purpose or reason for existence. Science can only describe how, and it can never describe why. Therefore, the existential characteristics of physical laws are only implied and not a direct consequence of them, and therefore cannot be applied to deny the presence of free will. In conclusion, the societal definition of free will is related and supported by the new laws of nature, specifically quantum theory, entropy and thermodynamics, and chaos theory. The relationship between societal and scientific definitions of free will are reinforced by the shifting of classical deterministic physics to modern indeterministic physics and the presence of unpredictability in current physics. However, conclusions about the purpose of humans, such as those detailed in existentialism, cannot be deduced from modern equation structure and therefore are unrelated. This is significant since the debate on the existence of free will and purpose of the human race has dated back to antiquity, along with the debate between scientific and religious truth. These debates will continue and define our present society and civilization into the future. Thank you very much for listening.